Let's talk pros and cons of new construction homes. Hey y'all, I am Melanie Beran with Wyatt Properties, my home in Houston, and I am so glad you're here. If you are considering buying, selling, or building in the Houston area, make sure that you tap that subscribe button so you can follow along for more information. All right, so today we're going to talk about some pros and cons of new construction here in Houston. So make sure you stay tuned to the end because there is a Houston-specific tip that I have for you, but we're going to jump right into the pros of building a new construction home. Okay, the first thing that we're going to talk about is that your upgrades are going to be folded into the cost of your home instead of added on after, which means they'll go into your mortgage and be part of your monthly payment, not a whole bunch that you have to come up with up front. So let's say you upgrade that cabinet from a level 1 to a level 2. That cost is going to be folded into your mortgage, and unless you go crazy at the design center and upgrade everything to its top level, you're going to be able to fold those costs into your mortgage. So the pro number one, or positive number one, of building new construction is those upgrades at the design center can be rolled into your mortgage instead of having to pay for them up front. Pro number two is going to be because you are building a new build, you're going to have overall typically lower maintenance costs, lower repair costs. You shouldn't have the big repairs. You're going to have builder's warranties. So over that first 5 to 10 years, you're probably going to have lower home ownership costs than if you bought a resale home. Those builder warranties are often what's called a 1 to 10, where the labor has a warranty for 1 year and parts have a warranty for 1 year. Some of your bigger items are going to have a warranty for 2 years, and then you have a structural warranty for like 10 years. So overall, pro number two is you're most likely, even though you're going to pay more upfront, going to have lower repair costs over the life of the home, especially in those first few years that you live there. Speaking of how long you live there, that is going to bring us to pro number three, and that is that the average homeowner in Houston lives in their home somewhere around 7 to 10 years. That means if you buy a new construction home, over the lifetime that you live there, you're probably not going to need to replace an AC. You're not going to need to redo a roof. Those major repairs that are the big items for homeowners, if you live there the average time a homeowner does in Houston, which is 7 to 10 years, you're probably not going to have to deal with those. And then you'll be able to resell it and be like, we're the original owners of this home. We have lived here for 8 years. The roof is only 8 years old. The plumbing is only 8 years old. The air conditioner is only 8 years old. And you're gonna have life left in that home when you sell it, and you won't have to absorb the cost of those major repairs while you live there. So that kind of pairs with number two, but it's worth mentioning on its own because the average homeowner in Houston lives in their home between 7 and 10 years. You are most likely not going to need to have to replace and absorb the cost of replacing major items like roof or air conditioner. And speaking of costs, let's talk about pro number four, and that is going to be builder incentives. Now these ebb and flow with the season and can change with the builder or the market, but builders can offer incentives for you to buy a new construction home because they're in business. They need to sell you their home, right? Builders will often offer incentives for you to purchase one of their homes. That could come in the form of closing cost assistance. That could come in the form of the builder being able to secure you a lower interest rate if you use their preferred lender. Right now, that is a really popular thing for builders to do, either assist in closing costs or buy down your rate. They may also offer incentives for you to have a certain amount of a dollar amount of upgrades at the design center, okay? So it varies by builder, it varies by community because the same builder in two different places may have different incentives for different homes and the different communities. But builder incentives can be a great reason to go ahead and buy that new build. We're gonna get in the cons real quick before we do. One, I wanna remind you that I have a Houston tip for you at the end. And two, I wanna make sure that you know that if you scroll down in the description of this video, there is my new construction guide. You can click on that link, put in your email, and it will shoot straight to your email, and it is over a dozen pages of information that will help you on your new construction home journey. So moving into the cons, let's talk about it. Number one, a lot of times, especially in the Houston area, those new build communities could have a higher tax rate. And what that can do is that can actually throw off your pre-approval. For example, a client may tell me, hey, I have a pre-approval from my lender, a great local lender at $250,000. And there's this new build that is, at $245,000 and I love it. And that's the one for me. I've got my pre-approval. That's great. And that's a great starting point. But what may happen is if the lender pre-approved you with a 2.8 tax rate and that new build community tax rate is 3.2, that could actually make your monthly payment too high and throw out your pre-approval. So that's one of the reasons it can be a good idea to go ahead and work with the builder's lender, because they're going to pre-approve you with the right tax rates. But it's also a good idea to have that independent pre-approval, because that opens your options up for a new build and a resale home. But that is one of the things that is a con of new construction, is a lot of times, not always, there's actually one right down the road from me that they have a tax rate under 2, which is fantastic for new builds in Houston. But a lot of times those tax rates are going to be a little bit higher. And so if you have an outside pre-approval and that says like 250, you may need to be capping yourself around the 230 range or lower for a new build. Con number 2 is going to be a variable timeline. New home building is a construction process, and I don't know about you, but I've never met a construction process that didn't have at least one delay. So you're just gonna need to have that in the back of your mind, that there could be construction delays. And especially if it's towards the very end of your home being built, you may already have your first home on the market and under contract, and there may be a delay. And as your realtor, that's one of the reasons you should work with us, is we will help you work through those issues. I have several plans that you can kind of choose from, and I can help guide you into. But you need to understand that it is a longer timeline than a resale home, right? It's typically going to be 3 to 5 months to build a home, if not longer. And it also, they could say, hey, we're going to close in November, and then there's a delay and you're closing in January. You're spending Christmas at a home you didn't anticipate. And if you're self-employed, that rolls into the next year's taxes and like all these things. So just know that there can be a variable timeline. You want to work with your realtor. You want to work with the builder. Whether your lender is an outside lender or the builder's lender, you want to work with them so that we're all in really good communication, and we're working through that timeline together as it moves on and you getting the keys to your home gets closer. So just pre-prepared. Just because the builder gives you a month that it will be finished does not mean that is the month that it will be finished. It could be later, it could be sooner, it could be that month. So work with a realtor and expect those delays so that we can work through them together. So con number 2 is a variable timeline and potential construction delays. And then con number 3 is going to be that your location selection is going to be much smaller than if you are also looking for resale homes. If you are looking for a new construction home, there's going to be communities on the map, and that's where they are, right? So there is a new build community in Pasadena, and if you want to live in Pasadena and in a new build, that's the one you have to go with. And especially that one is a smaller one, so there's only one builder there, so there's not even a builder choice there. You've got the one community with the one builder, and that's your option. If you want to move somewhere else in a new build in the area, then you would be looking into LaPorte and into Seabrook, potentially across the bridge into Baytown, that's the one, right? Down the 288 corridor, we're getting a lot of new builds, but even with those new builds, it's like you've got this one, this one, this one, and those are your options. There's not really a new build community 2 minutes from Beltway 8 and 288 anymore, right? So you are going to be a little bit more location limited. The great thing about that is a lot of those communities are building in community amenities and building, having commercial real estate planned for being right around those communities. So you'll be able to have a lot of what you need right there. But if you have to commute into the med center or something like that, those are just things you're going to want to think about as you're deciding, hey, I really like the idea of a new build, but these are other factors in my life that mean that these new build locations aren't the right fit for us. So those new build locations, that's con number 3, that is going to limit your location availability. And I promise you guys a Houston specific tip, and here it is. It is a big plus for new builds in Houston, in my opinion. As the builders get smarter and they figure out things like, not that they haven't known about engineering before, but they figure out civil engineering and flooding and all those kinds of things, a lot of the new builds where you see those cute little lakes, yes, they're cute little lakes to walk around, that is your flood control. The point of those lakes is for the lakes to flood and the streets to flood and the houses to not flood. So a lot of those new build communities are building in a lot of flooding mitigation features, which we know is great for the Gulf Coast and the Houston area. So that is a Houston specific positive that you might not have to worry about in Phoenix. But I hope this was helpful to you. If you're considering new construction, make sure that you leave your questions and comments below. Download that new construction guide that I have for you in the comments. Let me know what you think. And I hope something really great happens to you today.